The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or CBGTV.com. You're watching the Cannabis Broadcasting Group here at CBGTV.com.
You're listening to Green Crush with Alan Park. What's Green Crush? I don't know what that is. Well, it's a show, and it's an example of how you can use the fourth door, a hidden door, to get to stage 5, an impossible thing, they say. Cancer, it's over for you. We're moving into the cannabis era, and it's going to be a lot of fun kicking your ass out the door. This is the Green Crush. Hey there, thanks for tuning in to the first episode of Green Crush. This is the show that's going to tell you how to use cannabis in your life, how to save your life with cannabis, and how to understand how the representation of cannabis through the media is usually wrong. How are you doing? Welcome to Toronto. We're in beautiful downtown Toronto. I was paid to say that part. Downtown Toronto, we are at the beautiful Pacific Junction Hotel with the studios inside the Eggplant Digital Network right here. This is part of the Eggplant Studio system. These are, this is Canada's leading independent creative content hub, and you're now listening to some Creative Content Hub. Here we are talking about cancer and cannabis, but it's not just limited to that. It's limited to whatever you want to limit it to. There's going to be furniture. There's going to be makeup. There's going to be flooring. There's going to be protein bars. You know how they sell those all the time at the health food store. Going to be packed with cannabis right now. This kind of feels like Aunt Jemima has just invented syrup, and we're just about to have pancakes invented as well. That's kind of how it feels like to me. We are just sitting at the top of a revolution. Like I've got an oil derrick at the turn of the century, and they're just about to invent cars. That's what this show is all about. But it's mostly about the fact that, I have to read what they gave me to read here. Hang on a second. I'll explain who I am. My name is Alan Park. Some of you might know me, and some of you that don't. It doesn't really matter. I used to do things that I don't do anymore. It doesn't really matter. I wasn't supposed to be able to continue to do those things because I was supposed to die. I was told I was going to die. I was told by an expert that I was going to die. This happened a few years ago, 2013, lucky 13. I spent 2013 in a funk and a haze as I fell apart physically. And I went to the doctors and I asked the questions and I went for the tests and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. But let me read this thing here. This is what they say it is here. The former Air Farce comedian. So yeah, I used to be a comedian on a show called Air Farce. It was on for years and years and years. I was on the tail end of that the last 5 or 6 years or so. What does that tell you? And then they went to annual specials, and I did some of those. And then I couldn't really keep working because I got cancer. Stage 4 cancer. Don't cry for me. I'm okay. I'm sitting here. I've got my green tie on. This is the Green Crush. Everything's okay now. I want to get to that part. I've had trouble talking about this with this in stand-up because as soon as you say you've got stage 4, everyone's conditioned to go, oh my God, this guy's going to die right now. Because that's what we have to understand is the case. Stage 4 is the end. So let's get back to who I am and how this happened to me. To make it clear, I was a comedian. I was on a show. It was fun. The show ended. That was less fun. Then I got really sick. It was a terrible situation. Let me see if it's correct here. It says, yeah, stage 4 cancer. I know that sounds like a lie. I spent a lot of time deflecting criticism. Well, you can't possibly have had stage 4 cancer that long, or you wouldn't be here. That's where cannabis comes in. That's the Green Crush. The cannabis can crush cancer. It's also busy crushing the laws that are making access to cancer difficult, which is kind of strange, but we're going to get to the bottom of that. We're going to be talking to a lot of different people on this show, but right now I have to finish talking about who I am so that this makes sense to anyone. A lot of people make claims about things. I'm living proof of it, though. It's different. So let me say here, it says that I am green restored and green powered. That's true. We're going to crush cancer with cannabis, and we're also going to make money, and we're also going to change the way things work in this society. It's so punitive here. You take a plant to expand your consciousness, they want you in jail. Maybe that's because the system that's running things doesn't want you to know how full of shit it is. That's our first swear word. Russell is over here. I'd like to say hi to Russell. Russell's going to be helping me out. He is the brilliant, he's basically going to run everything electronic. So if there's a problem, that's his fault. Okay. And if it's not a problem, then I might take credit for it. But Russell is a key player here. And so thank you, Russell, for being here. First of all, I also want to toss a few credits out before I get back to me, before we get going. That theme song, that's by Legna Zeg. Let me spell that for you. Legna, Legna, Zeg, Zeg. It was on YouTube. It's free music. The guy makes music and puts it on YouTube for free. That's a nice thing to do. And then I had to listen to something, and I thought it really captured a lot of what I want to do here. So thanks to Legna Zeg for recording and making available The Reflection. That's the name of the song at the beginning of the show. It's not a song, though, I guess, if you're not singing lyrics. That's okay. So let me read this bio and see how it comes off, because a lot of times you read bios about people or what have you, and it's not even on. So it says, speaking from the personal experience of twice dragging himself off of a stage 4 guaranteed deathbed. That's actually true. That's a huge fact. I mean, if that came out of Donald Trump's mouth, you wouldn't believe it, right? You'd have a tough time. Let me just say that again. I have the personal experience of twice dragging myself off of a stage 4 guaranteed deathbed. Do you know what a guaranteed deathbed is? Like, there's the deathbed where you get to lie down and relax and then, eventually finish your life at some point. But a guaranteed deathbed is when they tell you, you've only got this much time. So I'm still wrestling in my mind with the fact that that was ever said to me. And just when you think you get past it, and it's not a factor anymore, it kind of clangs around in there like a clapper in a bell. And it's loud sometimes. So yeah, I did actually find myself at the bad end of a stage 4 cancer diagnosis. And so I've had to wait some time before I could talk about this in the world. I've done some jokes about it. I've done some stand-up about it, done some benefits for it, but you kind of need a conditioned crowd because people don't like hearing stage 4 cancer when they go out for some laughs. So this isn't all about laughs at all. This is about telling the truth of a really cool thing that grows outside in the sunshine, and rain comes down and nurtures it, and it pulls minerals and energy out of the soil and becomes something. This all sounds pretty crazy, but it's the reason I'm still here. So I've looked into a lot of different aspects about this phenomena called cannabis. And We're going to be doing a lot of different segments, but the reason I'm here right now to tell you about this is because when it first happened to me and I got the diagnosis, which was a series of crazy events that are some of them are funny, some of them are frightening. But when I got the diagnosis, all I could think about was, I just want to get my life back. I just want to get my life back. That's all I want to do. I just want to get it back. I just want to get it back. If you could just go back in time 10 seconds or 10 hours or a year or however long I'd been carrying this disease inside of me, this cancer that was lurking all summer and fall of 2013. What I'm trying to do is get to the point where I could just have my life back. That's all I wanted. And it's funny because it sounds like a cliche, but once you get your life back, well, I found out in my case, it's not the same life. You don't just get to go back to the way things were before, exactly the same, having visited the edge of existence. And again, being guaranteed an exit from that existence by someone who knows a lot more than you do because he went to a school and he went to several schools and he learned how to become one of the top doctors that there are. And you hear something like that from someone, and I can't really explain it to you other than I just didn't believe him. I didn't believe I didn't believe at all that he could possibly be accurate, which can easily fall into the category of denial. Like you've been told you're going to die. And of course you're saying, I'm not going to die. I'm not going to die. That is part of it. But the deeper part was it just didn't make sense to me. It wasn't right. And ultimately I knew he was wrong. It's going to be hard to explain how I arrived at that conclusion so quickly, but we will get into that because of the scope of this show. So let's get into the scope of the show. One of the things we're going to be doing is called the media mulch. Every week, a story from mainstream media news will get completely shredded. Why do I already know that's going to happen, even though that news hasn't come out? Because it happens almost every day. What I mean by that is the people that are struggling over the legalization and the regimentation of cannabis use and access are, they're the ones framing the narrative. They're the ones deciding how this is going to go. Think of how ridiculous it would be if you were a liquor purveyor and a wine purveyor, and you're trying to decide how to distribute your product, how much to sell it for, how to store it, how to regulate it, and you don't even drink. How can you be a non-alcoholic sommelier? It's ridiculous. So this is what they're doing with cannabis. You've got an avowed board of people on the transition team or whatever they call themselves out of Ottawa. You have a prime minister, Justin Trudeau, who says he smoked before and has smoked before, and his brother, etc. And so he's done that. But he's not using it anymore, of course, because he's the prime minister, and they never do things like that. And then you've got Bill Blair, the police chief, former police chief of Toronto, who is also in charge of making sure everything is okay with the release of cannabis into the freedom-loving society. And apparently everyone else on the team as well doesn't use it. So we can't really trust what they're talking about, but they frame the narrative. Justin will come out and say, okay, well, it's still illegal, so we're still pushing some laws at you. But that's not really the way it should be going. And unfortunately, there hasn't been anyone on the other side of the aisle to bring up the bullshit factor in what the government is throwing towards us. And the Mothers Against Drunk Driving and the people that just want to regulate this stuff inside a liquor store. Well, we just about had a liquor store strike. They didn't do it. The LCBO in Ontario almost went on strike, or so they said they did just before Canada Day. That's always good for two things. It jacks up sales. But listen, this is a medical application cannabis. I don't want to be told, oh, you can't get your medicine. Some guys are on strike because they're angry about the unfair monetary system that's left at play across the country. So they're clawing for their extra 2%, and the doors are shut, and you can't get your medicine that helps you with your diseases. Can't have that. So we can just stop talking about that right now. Of course, we won't. We'll have on people that want to advocate that system, and we'll have on people that are going to tell us why that's wrong. So that's on media mulch. That's one segment. It doesn't end well. It doesn't end well with media mulch, especially when there's only one company now or one or two companies now. But they say things that cannot be allowed to stand on their face, and I'm going to help take them down. Then there's a segment called You Can't Spell Illegal Without Legal, where we're going to talk about the laws and the rulings that seem deliberately complicated as the federal politicians keep moving the goalposts of the game of how are we going to do this. You know, they've got all kinds of things they need to consider. Like, how can a guy be in jail right now, rotting away for possession of cannabis relatively recently, and somebody else can actually profit from the consumption of it or the sale of it right now? How's that going to be okay? You tell me they're not shitting their pants with those pending legal suits. There's either going to have to be a mass, what am I trying to look for here? A forgiveness, an amnesty of everyone that's in there who's had their life damaged. They got a record. They were arrested. They had to go to trial. They had to waste the time of the gentleman in the black robes. All because they were using a plant, and that guy's doing time and somebody else is running around making money on it. Somebody else deeply invested into the federal government of Canada, the Liberals? I don't think so. So they need to sort out how that's going to go. And that's part of the reason things are taking so long. This punted date of when cannabis is going to be legal in the country. So there are police that say things about cannabis. There are judges. There are all kinds of people. And you will find them on TV at the paid what seems like a news report on a lot of local news outlets are in fact propagandic releases. So this particular show might also be considered a propagandic release because I'm going to be trying to push the pendulum as far to the other side as possible. We get enough mainstream all the time, okay? So then when we get down to that, we're talking about police use of cannabis itself, the obtaining of cannabis. We'll talk about that a little bit more on this very episode, because while this is an intro episode, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on the policing. That's the topic of the day. So that's what we're going to do. Is you can't spell illegal without legal, because people get really upset about cannabis. They say it's illegal. You're not allowed to use it. The government says. And so we have to hold that line until someone changes the law. And what that ignores is, while it's an interesting concept, the illegalization of cannabis itself, both in cannabis in the United States, which I'll be primarily speaking about, although it's a hassle around the world. Primarily speaking, making cannabis illegal and calling it marijuana was illegal on its face itself. So let's go back to that wrong. We have to dig a little further back into the past to kind of correct some of these things. You know, like you don't really want to put a third floor on your house if the foundation is no good. So then there's Turn the Page. We're going to do Turn the Page, which I guess is a bit of a combination of what I was just saying there. But politicians are against the green everywhere. I'm talking about Canada here, but yeah, they're against it everywhere. It's really difficult to get things said, to get things done, and they are calling the shots, and they're avowed non-users. This is completely ridiculous. You know, you have to appreciate the people who are using this as a life aid more than someone who never uses it, who looks down his nose at it, who thinks it's a bad idea, who doesn't believe the medical possibilities, and they're setting all the policy. That on its face is wrong. That needs to end. And so we need to rally people to make them understand that this thing that they might look down on even themselves, like a person in the street who's not one of these politicians might think it's a terrible thing. Well, they also need to be educated. There's a lot of information that's been suppressed. We're going to peel it all out. So we're going to turn the page. The politicians against green everywhere. We're going to get rid of those people because they're spouting non-science. They're harmful. It's harmful. It's harmful for Justin Trudeau and Bill Blair to put on the justice.gov website that they're going to be across Canada on a speaking tour telling people about cannabis usage and asking people and getting their opinions on cannabis usage. And then that's what they tell you they're doing. And then they don't list where they're going to be. They didn't actually list where they imagine trying to go see a favorite band in concert, but they don't actually mention the city or the place or the time. And you're supposed to sell out and apparently it was very well attended by police officers and off-duty police officers, but no one else seemed to know where this friggin' tour was going. So that's probably dirty pool. We're also going to be having a segment called What About the Children? What about the children, folks? This is what you hear all the time from the person who doesn't really have the argument against cannabis down at all. They'll just say, what about the children? I don't want the children to get a hold of the cannabis. Or they'll say the pot or the marijuana and try to downgrade its quality. Well, I don't want little children running around smoking joints either. That's not what this is about. Apparently, it's a lot easier to do that while it's as regulated as it isn't right now, as it is right now. Sorry, the way only some people have access to it. There's no telling that once it's properly distributed, the children are going to use it more. And in fact, a lot of the research shows the very opposite. Because once you know what it is and what it's supposed to do, that's even more powerful than playing around with it. It's even more powerful than playing around with it because you thought you were just getting high, but in fact, you're putting your body into a state of unable to get sick. You're changing the soil that your garden is. Your body's a garden that grows things, and hopefully it doesn't grow things like diseases and illnesses. And if you put your body into a state where those illnesses can't, it's like putting fertilizer in your garden, basically. We'll talk about that too. There's all kinds of science to all of these things. Of course, I'm not going to cite every single point while I'm hitting every topic in the encyclopedia. But when the guests come on, and we'll be citing the science every time because the science is also on my side. And the side of anyone that wants to restore their ability to live. So we'll have that. We'll have what about the children? Because what about the children at some of these hardware stores that can simply go in there and buy a circular saw or maybe a pane of glass? What about the children and a pane of glass? What would that do? You could smash that glass and use it to hurt someone. Okay, from now on, everybody that's selling glass has to be involved in a federal registry. Anybody selling power tools from now on, if there's any kids anywhere near that store, they're going to have to sign a list. You see what I mean? You could just make this about anything. It's the old argument. It's how you use it. Just because someone's an idiot doesn't mean someone that needs to use it and wants to use it and has the right to use it shouldn't use it because you're going to sing the song of the idiots. And when I say you, I mean the establishment. This is going to be an angry show sometimes, folks, but mostly it's a happy show. Mostly I found a door out of dying, and I'm trying to share it with as many people as I can. So we've had to put a new show together. There's a lot of activists in the country. Can name a few. I'm sure we'll have them on the show. Have been contacting various media outlets about having me back on to talk about some of this stuff. No one's interested, apparently. No one's picked up the ball and run with it. Hey, Network, remember that show you used to have that was, watched by millions? Yeah. Remember that one guy that was on it? Yeah. Whatever happened to him? I don't know. Well, he got stage 4 cancer. And just when you thought that was going to take him out 100% for sure, he did something illegal. And he's still here. You want to talk about it? No, that's okay. That's not news. So I don't know exactly what makes news anymore. And if people aren't interested, well, we've got this venture now so people can hear about it, because there are a lot of people in my position. A lot of people in my position. Russell's got a chest cold right there. I'm going to get him started on it later on. See, see what that does to the cardiovascular. So what about the children? It's great to think about, but it's also a fallacy. Okay. What about the children at a theme park or a water slide park and all that fecal matter? Someone takes a dump down the number 6 slide and everybody's got to leave. You don't think there's shit in there already? So it's how you use these things. And these arguments can't be framed anymore by the dire politicians that don't like things not going their way. It's not good enough anymore. We're also going to be talking about ancient history of cannabis. Oh my God, this is where you find out you're supposed to have it in the first place. The ancient history of cannabis. The use of plants for healing has been going on throughout the ages. Just the very act of using cannabis itself as a remedy was going on for 100 years. 100 years. And then they took it off the market and replaced it with everything else. So, yeah, we'll be talking conspiracy as well, because when pharmacies and big pharma, as people call it, or the pharmaceutical cartel, or however you want to look at it, it's funny to me that it's always laughed at that they would ever want to sit down and make sure they could fatten their profit margin, which is the very definition of a conspiracy. A couple of guys sitting down going, let's make sure this thing goes like this. So when you've got a medicine that's been kicking around for 100 years, and then they take it off the market, that sounds a bit strange to me. Like cannabis as a medicine back in 1820 or 1830, whatever they were using it for, if there were a problem with it, then maybe after 2, 3, 5 years, okay, we have to stop using this terrible matter. Okay, it's been 10 years now. Okay, we've been using it for 10 years, and there must be some kind of thing we can do to get it off the market, because it hasn't been helping anyone. In fact, it's been causing a lot of, it's been on the market for 25 years now? Oh, okay. Well, anyway, we should take it off the market because, and then 50 years and 75 years. I don't think there was anything wrong with cannabis as a medicine back in the day before they illegalized it, because it had been around for 100 years as a medicine, as a Western-based medicine. And it's only around the 30s, 1937, 8, something like that, where they took it off the market. Then you have pharmaceutical remedies that are good for specific ailments, as opposed to the umbrella tactic that the cannabis partakes itself of. Therein partakes. You have to get a little legalese in there once in a while, I think, for people to make it seem like, you've heard about this out of a book. This isn't just out of a book. This is my own life. But anyway, so the ancient history will be covered. We're also going to cover in a segment called Unblinded Me with Science. I alluded to that earlier. We do have the science for this. There is a lot of knowledge, a lot of fact about this particular topic, and a lot of it doesn't get mentioned when you're making new laws. So we're going to be talking to various different people about what it does, what it doesn't do, how it can help you specifically, biologically, so that we can show you that this, in fact, does work. So that's kind of leads us into cannabis versus pharma. Is weed an antidepressant? Is it a painkiller? Is it a relaxant? Is it an appetite enhancer? Is it a sleep inducer? Yes, 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 and a million times yes. Of course, it's a sleep inducer. Remember the guys that were always tired in high school? They were doing it wrong. Just like me, I was doing it wrong. Makes you tired because it's trying to get your body to rest, to rebuild. Makes you hungry and gives you the munchies because your body needs nutrition. So that's all fun when you're having a laugh at a younger age, but later on, they're tools. Okay, so there's that. And then we're also going to be featuring some fantastic people on the show who we're going to call best buds. These are folks that have gone down the health path with some horrendous stories. And when I say horrendous, I mean they could happen to you. It could happen to you. Happened to me. And I didn't think it was going to happen to me. I was pissed off it happened to me, but that's what happens. It happens anyway. Can't plan against it, but you can be ready for it. We'll talk about why I was so far gone and how I'm so back to normal later on, but that's the given premise of the show. I was able to do it. And there's no way I'm the only one that's able to do it. I know other people that have done it. Okay, then we have nopioids. That's what we're going to be talking about. This opioid problem that we have is, it started, I think I first came across my awareness of opioids with Rush Limbaugh, so that can't be a good sign. He was on hillbilly heroin, and somehow it's become available across the board to the point where people are actually ruining the quality of their lives with this stuff. So I put it forward that some cannabis, this is just coffee, by the way. There's nothing funny going on here. That's for sure. No funny here. Cannabis and its proliferation are going to help us with the opioid crisis. How about that? What about the children there, huh? What about the children? What about the children? I got to go back to that one. That one really pisses me off. When my children found out I was doing what I was doing with cannabis oil, they were pretty happy, actually. Two more things, two more topics, and of course there'll be other things to mention as well before we get to some of the show today. Before we get rolling with that, couple of big points. Trauma reduction. Hey, what are these topics? This isn't what I thought was going to happen. I thought we were going to be making pillowcases with hemp fiber. Well, we might bring someone in that can do that also, but trauma reduction, that's what I want to talk about now. Because I don't know anybody that hasn't been through a trauma. I've been through a trauma. Just speaking about this disease, this stage 4 cancer, that's a trauma. It was a trauma when they told me. It was a trauma on the way into it before I knew that's what it was. It's certainly been a trauma on the way out. So while you heal the cancer, or remedy it, or put it into remission, or whatever you want to call it, while you're doing that, it's the trauma that you also have to treat. And guess what else the cannabis does? It doesn't just heal the body, it actually activates in your brain in such a way that reduces trauma, PTSD, usually left unaddressed, such as in the case of my father and a lot of other people who went through wars and didn't get any counseling and were told to keep a stiff upper lip afterwards. This stuff can actually reduce the trauma. And it's fascinating because it's doing something to your brain in that capacity, which means that the authorities are going to be interested in it because they certainly spend enough time on your amygdala and the fear center and preying upon that and using it to go to war and tell us scary things. And we have to be scared all the time. And so they do pay attention to the brain. It can't be said they don't pay attention to the brain. But certain parts are left alone and untended. We'll get to that later. But let me just say it briefly. Cannabis usage, particularly the oil I'm talking about, what's known as Rick Simpson oil, can drastically reduce trauma in your life. Imagine moving through your day with the mental anguish of life's major stresses nearly wiped out. So that's a big deal. I'm going to have someone on talking about that. It's a really interesting story. And if you can take the trauma out of your life, you can have a better life, no matter what you're going through. And then, of course, future weed. Of all the things to come, like I said, the chewing gum, the fabrics, sustainable farming and jobs, etc. We're going to be all over the place. This is a new frontier now. And we're just kind of tired of playing the game the old way. by obeying a bunch of rules and a bunch of laws from a series of people that don't really have your best interest or my best interest at heart. So let me tell you where you can get some of these stories before you get into the rest of this episode. Maybe put this on pause right now, since we're not currently live on YouTube through Eggplant Digital Network. So go on YouTube and then dial up Eggplant Digital Network. That's what you want to do. And you'll be able to see this show live in the moment. We're going to be doing this every single week for the next little while. Eggplant Digital Network. Get on YouTube first. Go to Eggplant Digital Network. And then it's going to be every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Okay, you can pick those later, whichever it works out to be. Every Tuesday at 1 p.m., just in case. I don't know exactly where we're going to land this thing, so I'm giving Russell a few darts to put in there. Okay, so if you're on social media, let's just swing it over here before we get too specific now. If you're on social media, check this out. Go to Facebook and dial in Cannabis Cures Cancers. So that's Cannabis, cures, Cures, cancers. Not just one cancer. Put that in there, join that group. If you don't join that group, just go in there and take a look and have a read at some of the things that are there. Maybe you've never considered this before or can't believe it or don't believe it, but there's a community of us. There are a lot of people of us. And that's what I'm saying, us is people who have been compromised by some kind of disease, who are handling that disease very well or very effectively or above any other methodology using cannabis. So you can do that, and maybe when you start to type in the word cannabis into your Facebook search engine, other names will come up. Here's another one, cannabis oil success stories. And I'm sure there are other I'm in a few of them. I've joined a bunch of groups. I just like to go in there and watch people talk and speak with their right minds about how this stuff has affected them from the edge of their life to. I mean, there's some people that have had some horrific things going on with them in the way of skin cancer. Okay, I can't speak to that as a survivor and as a champion, but several people can, and you can't believe some of the healing that goes on with cannabis. There are very logical, fair enough reasons for why that is, but it's incredible. It does actually work that way. So let's get into a segment now. This is something that that I wanted to say. Oh, just before we get going, I don't know exactly when you're listening to this, but we could be at the end times here. Everything has been a giant sea, a giant iceberg has broken off Antarctica, the Larsen Sea ice shelf. So now there's the biggest ice cube in the world floating around out there. So everyone's worried about the poles melting over. And Mount Vesuvius is on fire. So there's like a volcano happening, blasting itself over Italy right now, and it looks terrible. So this is just a normal thing, or the show's over because you didn't get to hear it because we were all engulfed by lava. But I just wanted to, that's the time frame reference of where we're on the air right now. So let's talk about let's do a segment on policing. Okay, this is what's happened according to the police here. We have this Project Claudia in Toronto. Project Claudia started last year, 2016, early on. I think it was 2016, last year, where what they're doing is the police are going around to various distribution centers, or what they call compassion centers, or dispensaries, where the cannabis is sold to people like me who use it for all kinds of reasons. And let me just stop right here and say, if you think that I'm only saying this for the medical users, because it's a decent thing to be allowed access to a compound that can actually help you save your life, you're mistaken. Because while I stand behind that fully, I also stand behind being able to use it as a recreational plant. Why not? It's all paranoid, anal, clinging to old theories, and we're going to desecrate all of those theories. But Project Claudia happened because the police, well, first of all, they have to come up with a name. So why pick Claudia? That's a lame name, Claudia. No offense to anyone named Claudia, but you know what it means. It means it's a lame thing. It's a lame person, someone who's sick. So when they decided to call this a dispensary busting program, Project Claudia, was it a joke about the sick that are lame and need the medicine, or was it a joke that the project itself is lame? I was saying it at the time. It's ridiculous to be going around busting people. We have a mayor in John Tory here who keeps trotting out terms like the Wild West. We can't have that anymore. And it's been all bullshit. And I'm proud to have been saying that. I've been saying it's bullshit since it started. I mean, I'm no genius, but you just have to look at it to see what a rig it is. But these cops are going around busting people. So they've been busting people that work in dispensaries. They've been making supply available to patients and people that need people that are already aware of the medicinal aspects of the thing and already want to use it or already want to exercise their own freedom to use a plant. Like, you don't have to get a special permit to eat a Cobb salad down at Montana's, but it's on the same level. So they've been raiding dispensaries constantly. They're using battering rams. They have their guns drawn. They're scaring people. Trauma, the amygdala. Once again, it's the very antithesis of cannabis as a substance. They were doing it constantly, and people were getting upset. And then at the end of last year, at the end of 2016, here comes the Prime Minister of the country, Justin Trudeau. Let me just read this to you now. This is from December 3rd, 2016, just on our way to Christmas last year. A frustrated Prime Minister Justin Trudeau wants police to enforce the law and criminally charge illegal marijuana dispensaries, even though weed legalization is looming. And he's maintained that position the whole time. He says, people are right now breaking the law. Hey, fuck the law. Whoa, do I look here? Fuck the law. The law is wrong. The law was like in prohibition with alcohol back in the 20s and 30s. You've got a fucking mistake on your hands. That's what you've done. I don't need to govern my behavior because you're a fuck up. It's not my problem anymore. We have to look at it in a different way. When I realized that I was sick and dying and I needed to fill out some forms and try to get involved with the medical marijuana providing situation board of authority of Canada, or whatever the hell it was, I looked at some things on the internet and I said, none of this matters. I don't have to sit here and fill out a form to decide whether or not I can have permission to use a plant to save my own life. That's fucking insane. Because even if I played by the rules, there would have been the amount of time involved to do that. Then you have to wait. Then maybe they're going to say no. And then maybe it's a certain amount of time. I didn't have any of that time. Any of that time. So I just started on it right away. So we don't care that the laws are getting bent. I mean, he bends laws all over the place, Trudeau does. But when it comes to cannabis, he says, we haven't changed the laws. We haven't legalized it. Yes, we got a clear mandate to do that. We've said we will. We've said we're looking to do it to protect our kids and keep the money out of the pockets of criminals. That's nonsense talk. So that was in December. And he's maintained that position ever since. Okay, so we're up to that speed. Then the next thing I'm going to throw in here is that was in the Toronto Star, by the way. Here's a cool little article here. While he's blustering with that, here we have the first Canadian study examining patients' use of cannabis dispensaries finds high satisfaction. I guess that's a little joke there. But this is from UBC, the British Columbia University. Patients who use it for therapeutic purposes from storefronts. It kind of snagged me out here. Patients who use cannabis for therapeutic processes rate storefront dispensaries highly for quality, safety, availability, and efficiency, but less highly for cost compared to some other cannabis sources. But that's only because it's illegal. So that'll come down. So generally, people are finding great relief with this in the way it's already being distributed, in how it's affecting their bodies. So we've got that going on. At the same time, Justin just wants to keep on arresting everybody. Just keep on arresting them. That's the law. That's the law. That's the law. Right? And isn't it amazing to me that the police, who have been arresting people constantly with Project Claudia, while people like me said it's bullshit, while people like me said it's oppressive, while people with an eye could see the ridiculousness of these people going in and stealing products from another place that are meant for health and recreation. And they busted so many people last year. And now what are they saying? Now they're saying that the police may drop the charges of the May 2016. They're actually dropping charges of people they arrested in the first place, which proves they don't really need to be out there. Now, once we start getting into how many man hours of every police station goes into any kind of cannabis enforcement, maybe next year we don't have $1 billion Toronto police budget. Maybe once this thing's all legal, we naturally don't need that many police. We naturally don't need that high of a budget. Can't keep cranking up the other way. I think that might be some of the reason why it's taking so long to make the transition. They're looking for legitimate means and ways to sort of keep policing existence happening, even though something that used to be illegal will soon be legal. So that's the kind of screwed up shit that we have to undo here. You can't have a substance that's saving people's lives on the one hand, being told it's a terrible thing on the other hand, arresting people on the other hand, then not even prosecuting the arrests because we're not doing that. Well, I think you've got an expenditure there that you don't really need to make, especially when you've got the UN drug office that still can't find a single cannabis overload. Now, if you have a cookie or you have something that's got a high dose on it, of course you have to watch what you're doing. It's just like you don't sit down and drink an entire bottle of 40-pounder of scotch in 10 minutes. Because if you have a cookie that's got too much in it or some kind of amount of anything, of course you could pitch forward and go down the stairs and crack your head, and that's the end of you. But that doesn't seem to be happening anywhere. Not according to the United Nations anyway. They've released their 2017 World Drug Report covering 2015 statistics from around the world and finds that cannabis is the most consumed and most widely cultivated and most confiscated drug. It's not, I don't even know if it's a drug, folks. It's a green crush, that's for sure. You're listening to Green Crush. Let me tell you a couple things I'm going to throw out really quick. Cannabis chemicals stop prostate cancer growth. Oh, that's just from the cancerresearchuk.org. This is from 2009. I wish I'd read this a long time ago. Active chemicals in cannabis have been shown to halt prostate cancer cell growth, according to... Gee, I wonder if that's what happened to me. I wonder if when I was given no other option back in 2013, that my doctor at the time had not yet read this article or does not care about reading this article. Fascinating that this information is right here from years before, and yet I was given no option. So you have to take the option, I think, is what we're after here. And now we'll get ready to close out with some hellish stuff, okay? Because this has been fun for me so far to talk to you guys initially. I've got Russell here. We're broadcasting from the Eggplant Digital Network, a major content creating hub from downtown Toronto on King Street. So here's a great article I'm going to pull out here. There are little pieces as to why this thing is so difficult to obtain. Okay, this is going to elucidate some things, I'm sure. This is something you can download. You can take a read of it. It's by Clive R. Boddy, Boddy. Clive R. Boddy wrote it back in 2011. This is the corporate psychopaths theory of the global financial crisis. Look that up and take a look. And it says here in the introduction, an understanding of corporate psychopaths as expressed in a recent series of papers in this journal is based on empirical research and has helped to answer the question of how organizations end up with imposters as leaders. This also goes for countries. And how those organizations are then destroyed from within. And this is a great article that you should spend some time on, because what you see here, and it's from years ago, but you see the underpinnings of the revolution of what's going on right now with the corporations taking over. I mean, they can literally, this thing was written before a corporation could take a hunk of ground and frack with it and pump poison into the ground and water into the ground that's toxic. So let's just jump to this part on it. It says, further, they seem to be unaffected by the corporate collapses they have created. This is like the financial guys who had the meltdown and everything in 2007-8. They present themselves as glibly unbothered by the chaos around them, unconcerned about those who have lost their jobs, savings, and investments, and as lacking any regrets about what they have done. They cheerfully lie about their involvement in events, are very persuasive in blaming others for what has happened, and have no doubts about their own continued worth and value. They are happy to walk away from the economic disaster they have managed to bring about with huge payoffs and with new rules advising governments how to prevent such economic disasters. These are the guys that set the government tone. Psychopaths. Psychopaths are people who, perhaps due to a physical factor, to do with an abnormal brain connectivity and chemistry, especially in the areas of the amygdala. Once again, the fear center. So let me close out by saying this. The amygdala, the fear center of the brain, they know about that. It's used in advertising. It's used in government policy. It's tweaked and triggered every time there's a terrorist attack. And so that proves to me they do know about the brain and the various areas of how the brain works. There is a lot of research available, and it's not really discussed much other than in papers like this. But it really does have to do with why your taxes are so high. It really does have to do with why you need 3 jobs just to make ends meet. And it really does have to do with how they get away with these greater things, such as making a medicine unavailable to most of the people that deserve to have it. They're tapping into that amygdala. They're doing it constantly, and it's definitely deliberate. And so if you know the different pieces of the brain, the different components that make it up, as well as the amygdala, there's also the pineal gland, which they make sure is left relatively dormant and undiscussed, certainly in North America. And when you use cannabis, you get to polish that thing off a little bit. It helps you see some things. And it's kind of exciting. I think it's another reason that we don't really want cannabis proliferating into the public scene. People start to see the curtains that are dividing the policymakers from their electorate. So then we move on to corporate psychopaths, and this is a great piece. We'll spend more time dipping into it, but let me jump over here. The corporate psychopaths are charming individuals who have been able to enter modern corporations and other organizations and rise quickly and relatively unnoticed within them because of the relatively chaotic nature of the modern corporation. This corporate nature is characterized by rapid change, constant renewal, and quite a rapid turnover of key personnel. These changing conditions make corporate psychopaths hard to spot because constant movement makes their behavior invisible, and combined with their extroverted personal charisma and charm makes them appear normal and even to be ideal leaders. And that's why those guys are in charge. They're in charge of the lobbying groups against cannabis. They're in charge of the folks in office and a lot of the companies that stand to profit by keeping cannabis illegal, not the least of which are the police. So we're just about out of time here, folks, on episode number 1 of Green Crush. We'll be back next week with a guest and a more pointed topic, a little more flow in what we're putting together. I won't be cramming in 15 different topics next time, but this is basically what we're all about here. And we're uncovering this through 25 ways to suppress the truth. That's what we have here. 25 ways to suppress the truth. The Rules of Disinformation. This is written by H. Michael Sweeney in 1997. And just before we fade out this particular episode, I want to say thank you for listening. If you are a person looking for help and understanding regarding cannabis, this will be the program to turn to. If you want to buy anything, this will not be the place to come. We don't sell anything but free awareness to information that everybody is supposed to have. So with that in mind, let me just get to the 25 ways to suppress truth, because I've been going deep into why and how this stuff is illegal. So listen to this. Understand that when those seeking resolution of such crimes proceed in attempting to uncover truth, which is what I'm trying to do, the crime being the burying of cannabis and the demonization of it in the first place. And now that I know that it helps me out immeasurably, of course, I want easy access to it. It says here that they try their best to present factual information constructed as an argument for a particular chain of evidence towards a particular solution to the crime. Does that make sense? Did I need to say that again in one piece? I think so. Okay. Understand that when those seeking resolution of crimes proceed in attempting to uncover truth, they try their best to present factual information constructed as an argument for a particular chain of evidence towards a particular solution to the crime. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to put this information back into the forefront so people understand it does exist. It says, this can be a largely experimental process via trial and error. That's why they call this one episode 1. And with a theory developed over time to perfection or defeated by the process. So that's what we're in the middle of, folks. This thing's either going to get bigger or disappear. And I think with cannabis, where it's at, we know which way that's going. This is their most vulnerable time, meaning the person, me, who's trying to reveal the truth. The time when a good disinfo artist can do the greatest harm to the process. Maybe that's why there's no guest on the first show. I don't want to take that risk right now. But folks, you've been listening to Green Crush. This is going to get really meaty over the summer, and we're going to have a lot of amazing people talking about some incredible things, but I'm just going to close out by saying this. You don't have to die necessarily. It's not going to work for everyone. It's not going to work for everybody. That's for sure. It's certainly more effective on some versions of cancer than others. But overall, if it saves one person, as they say, then it's definitely worth doing. And I am one person that it saved, and I know of many, many more. So hopefully you guys will take a shot at opening up your vista and understanding that cannabis doesn't have to be demonized. People will still misuse it, but people do that with hammers and nails and screwdrivers all the time. This is Green Crush. We're going to change the way things are.
Harlequin is an ultra-diverse combo hybrid that is brimming with all sorts of superpowers. Boasting a really high CBD level, around 1 to 15%, which is a clear indicator of its medicinal abilities. It is also why this strain is a favorite among doctors who are looking to prescribe something potent for the fight against chronic pain. Cherry OG is appealing to users with a strong sweet tooth. It is cherry-flavored with hints of ripe strawberries and a subtle tinge of sour diesel that entices the palate. But that is not all. The potent strain contains THC levels between 19% to 22% and is a perfectly balanced hybrid with equal parts sativa and indica.
White Sumo, a rare slightly sativa-dominant hybrid strain. 60% sativa, 40% indica, created through crossing the classic sumo target with white OG strains.
Banana Mac, also known as Banana Miracle Alien Cookies, is a slightly indica-dominant hybrid strain 60% indica and 40% sativa, created by crossing the delicious Banana Kush with Miracle Alien Cookie strains. We are the Cannabis Broadcasting Group here at CBGTV.